Animals play an important role in our ecosystem. They help with nutrient cycling and they help to maintain balance. Currently, species are threatened and endangered due to being taken from their natural habitats, poached, and traded for profit. If the overexploitation of these animals is not stopped, in the very near future, it is likely for us to see the extinction of many of the animals that we commonly see today. For instance, the illegal trade of wildlife directly decreases the amount of biodiversity. A study conducted by EcoHealth explores the consequences of the wildlife trade. Researchers compiled 14 years of seizure records from international wildlife trade monitoring organizations such as CITES and Traffic to help quantify the wildlife trade. It was discovered that the illegal trade of wildlife is the largest illegitimate business next to narcotics and stands as a major threat to wildlife as well as to humans. This is because the biggest specimens are often the most desired, and thus we end up depleting the population of its fittest individuals. As to its effect on humans, the article mentions that with the transportation of large amounts of live specimens, there is an increased risk of pathogen pollution. According to the seizure records, many of the animals that are seized are noted to be ill, and by transporting these animals, we're helping to transport disease across the globe. Moreover, exploitation in the form of poaching is threatening species viability. Poaching is the illegal killing of animals, usually when the animal has something that is deemed of value. One of the major contributors to animal deaths due to poaching is the ivory trade in Africa, with the most commonly poached animals being penguins, elephants, rhinos, and lions. The ivory of these animals is used for jewelry, decor, and traditional medicines. According to National Geographic, 30,000 elephants are killed every single year by poachers. Stephen Messenger conducts an interview in 2014 with a convicted poacher that provides us with perspective not really talked about when discussing poaching. A 33-year-old Kenyan man named John Kamoy admits to killing 70 elephants after spending 2 years in prison. He explains how drought, famine, and climate change led him to the illegal business. Before becoming a poacher, he planted maize and Malay with his family up until a famine hit, and then he experienced the loss of livestock and the loss of his livelihood. He decided to turn to poaching to prevent his family from starving to death, and in 2002, he killed his first elephant. He described the experience of throwing the spear into the elephant as heaven falling down. Despite his guilt and regret, he continued to poach up until his arrest. Consequently, the ongoing supply and demand of poaching is largely due to the relaxed animal rights laws. In Africa, there is legislation without enforcement, meaning that there are laws in place to stop poaching, but those laws are not being implemented by law enforcement. According to recent analysis from the World Bank Group on funding to combat wildlife trade, only 19% of funds went to law enforcement, and only 6% of funds went to communication and awareness. In 2015, an interview was conducted with a law enforcement ranger named Wyan van Zyk at a private game reserve in South Africa. The 20-year-old ranger sheds light on how unevenly matched they are in the fight against organized wildlife crime. He tells the interviewer how poachers have helicopters and have very high-tech, powerful tools that allow them to track down and tranquilize an animal, cut off its horns and parts of its face, and then leave the animal to die slowly, all within a mere 45 minutes. Whereas the park rangers are only equipped with a couple of rifles and motorcycles. Oftentimes, when referring to countries that have an excessive amount of poaching, it is usually due to lack of law enforcement. But this interview gives us insight, gives us perspective of rangers that actually want to help and stop poaching, but are not equipped with the resources to do so. Continuing to overlook these wildlife issues will have a detrimental effect on society and the environment. Because every organism has a role to play, getting rid of these keystone species will have a ripple effect, eliminating all other species that rely on it for survival. Not to mention, overexploitation depletes the environment of natural resources. Grasslands and forests rely on these animals for nutrients to grow. And if you take those animals out of the equation, the plants no longer have nutrients, and then they die. And in turn, we die. What's happening right now in our environment is referred to as discounting. This is when a population takes all of the natural resources for itself without leaving any for future generations. If this discounting is not stopped, we're likely not going to have enough resources to sustain ourselves. Thank you.